truth, logic, common sense, that gut feeling, and yes, even a little psychoanalysis. As we are once again together, you and I, to discuss Chad and Lori Daybell. Y'all remember when all this shit went down and we started getting all these media reports? And then if you hit on Google Images under Chad and Lori getting married in Hawaii, you seen all these nasty ass, disgusting pictures of Lori in her lace dress, which she ordered long before Tammy was murdered. The fact that they're wearing rings that she ordered on Amazon on Charles Vallow's account, you know, knowing good and damn well that all this was gonna happen. Y'all remember the lays, you know, that were around the flower necklaces around their neck, and Chad's sitting there with his damn ukulele, and Lori is sitting there doing her hands left to right like she's at some Hawaiian luau. And then there's a picture of Chad actually holding Lori up with her leg just sprung out there like she's some damn high-flying cheerleader. It actually, when I look at that picture, it kind of reminds me of the FLDS. When these men would marry these younger children and would hold them in their arms. It's absolutely disgusting. But we looked at that, and that was absolutely the epitome of where these people were. Now, if you moved it a little bit further, you saw the look in Chad and Lori's eye and the way they behaved when Nate Eaton was talking about, where's the kids, Lori? Where's the kids? And all of this. We saw the epitome of just where these people's minds were. They could have cared less about anything. So Chad and Lori did. They got married on that beach, and you know, there's so many things that we could discuss about it, and we will, because from here on out, for a little while anyway, we're going to be discussing aggravating factors in the death penalty case of Chad and Lori. Now, I know we've generally went over this topic, but I just kind of want to home in on it and get more of an environmental view of just how disgusting and evil and diabolical these two really are. I mean, we already know, right? Why not home in on it a little bit? You know, if you look at it and you move forward, you can see other examples of how Chad and Lori behaved after the children and Tammy were murdered. If you look at February 13th of 2020, now stop for a minute. February 13th of 2020, they've got a picture of Chad and Lori in Hawaii. They're in a grocery store, and Lori's leaning on a shopping cart, lovingly looking up at Chad. And I cannot help, when I think about their marriage on the beach, this photo of them in the grocery store the day before Valentine's Day. They haven't a care in the world, and they are actually, to me, showing more and more, at least two of the aggravating factors that are listed in the capital case against Chad and Lori. You've got the murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity. And we know just from the children, we don't have the autopsy report of Tammy, but we do have it about the children, and I won't go into that. We know that is one of the aggravating factors when they found the remains of JJ and Tylee. But this is the one that I want to home in on, because we're going to apply the Quinton Simon case to the Chad and Lori Daybell case, and we're going to see down this road of understanding, justice through understanding, just how depraved, diabolical, evil these people really are. And the next one would be by the murder or circumstances surrounding its commission, the defendants exhibited utter disregard for human life, and you cannot see it any other way. When you think of everything that Chad and Lori did after the children were murdered and Tammy was murdered, you know that they did not have any remorse. They had no sadness or anything of that sort. You know, if anybody wants to say that time that Lori showed up in her powder blue top at one of the hearings when she was represented by Mark Means and she grabbed a tissue to wipe her eye, to me, and y'all can think whatever you want to think, she just was busted. She knew she wasn't going anywhere. And so that was a tear for herself. Now some say, well, Kobe and his wife Kelsey was there, or Chelsea was there, and that upset Lori. Well, she sure didn't act that way on the phone recording of Kobe when she says, what do you think that it is that I've done wrong? This woman is exceptionally, she disregards human life altogether. So, we're going to go through all of this. I know that, you know, when we talk about their marriage in Hawaii and how they behaved, when you talk about, you know, them at the day before Valentine's Day, they're probably shopping for groceries to have them a special little thing. And then you just stop and you kind of grasp this whole thing about when the police came and raided their place there in Hawaii. They found 2 yoga mats. You gotta know that they had to have used those yoga mats at least once. And if you stop and really think about the fact that they knew them children were murdered and how they were murdered, and also the fact that Tammy was murdered, they are sitting on those damn yoga mats, acting like the king and queen. They're probably, Chad's probably on his yoga mat right by Lori's, and she's dang in her yoga pants, and she's doing her bends and turns, her twister kind of shit, and he's probably getting a woody about all of it. And they're probably, you know, sitting there trying to keep their physical bodies in shape, their temples, because they have so much they've got to do to further their king and queen existence in the 144,000. And then we think about after the children are murdered and Tammy is murdered, you think about Melanie Gibbs' recorded phone call to Chad and Lori and how they behaved in that. How Chad, oh, hi, sweet Melanie, and all this other stuff. They had nothing in their voice whatsoever. It's like they didn't even know the children existed. They had exceptional depravity for human life. And you think about when Melanie Gibb talked about, well, is JJ safe? And Lori says he's happy, he's safe, everything's fine. Well, doesn't that sound a lot like Leilani Simon, the mother of Quinton Simon, when she says she hopes her child, Quinton, is safe and happy? Think about the dichotomy. Think about the similarities. She says, and this is a reporting, she says, we're just hoping that he's in somebody's house and they're feeding him and maybe they wanted a baby or couldn't have a baby. Maybe they thought they were his savior. That's our best hope at this point, says Quinton Simon's mother. And she knew, absolutely knew that Quinton was dead. She put him in a dumpster and he ultimately ended up in a landfill. But she was saying these things just as Lori was saying these things because they did not want to accept responsibility for what they had done to their children. And if you think about Chad and you think about what he said, the last thing he said it was this male reporter in Hawaii. He said something to the effect the kids are okay. And then, of course, you got their attorney, Barthlick, who said this is rumor and speculation the whole time, y'all. And we know this, but it's never really been spoken if you think about it. They knew these children were dead in Chad's backyard. And this Quinton's mother, she knew that her child, her 20-month-old little boy, was also dead in a landfill. She says, I'm here. This is Leilani Simon, and this is the mother of Quinton Simon. She says, I'm here. I've been here every day since this. I'm not running and I'm not hiding. And if something does come up that I am at fault, I will take myself to that police station. Well, y'all, we now know, now that she's been arrested, that she knew all along that she had murdered her son and put him in a dumpster. She already knew that, but yet she would go on an interview. At least she gave an interview. And the reason she gave that interview is because she tried to say that the child had been abducted or whatever. She, in her own mind, thought if they didn't find that child, then she needed to get out there in front of it to make it look like she wasn't guilty of anything. And, the difference between her and Lori was that Lori never gave an interview. Lori thought that all she had to do was just behave as if nothing was wrong, and that, as long as she didn't speak to anybody, as long she could make everyone assume, well, just by looking at her, that the children were fine. Nobody wants to wrap their head around how a mother would behave that when a mother knows that her children have been murdered. And so she thought if she just kept that flippant attitude coming from Hawaii to Idaho, and the way she walked into that courtroom, the way she wore her Kool-Aid lipstick and just was flippant and all that, that people would think that she had her children hid somewhere. And as long as they didn't find those bodies, then she was going to be fine. They could not hold her forever in a jail cell. So, Lalina, or however you say her name, Simon, she, as long as Quinton wasn't found, she was going to get out in front of it. She was going to give interviews. She was going to make it look like she'd done nothing wrong. And Lori, on the other hand, did not give interviews, but her behaviors in and of themselves would make someone believe that, she was hiding those children, because the only other plausible explanation that anyone could wrap their head around is that, she didn't give a rat's ass, basically. Because when all this went down initially, y'all, when Lori was acting that way and everyone was like, well, gosh, the FBI's come out with this flyer and, Lori and Chad is in Hawaii. Why is she acting this way? Nobody wanted to see it that way. And if you'll recall, when I opened this channel, I really thought, I told all of y'all, I thought there's no way that I can see that those children are dead. She's got them hid somewhere. But we were all mistaken. And we know Chad never gave an interview. If Chad at all, if he thought Lori and Alex had done all this, or if he was confused or whatever, and he couldn't understand, first of all, he would have went to Lori, and Lori would have said, well, Chad, me and Alex put the kids somewhere safe, right? Well, then why didn't he just come out and say that? Why didn't he just come out and say that? So we are going to go into application of Quinton Simon, the Quinton Simon case, and we're going to do some application here. But before we do, I want to read some of y'all's comments, because they did. They absolutely did. Just as they found Tylee and JJ in Chad Daybell's backyard, they found Quinton Simon in a landfill. It took them a while to find him, but they arrested the mother. So Janet Mosier said, it's hard to comprehend why any mother would kill her child. Rest in peace, baby Quinton. Okie dokie says, he was so little. Guard your hearts and minds and teach your children to do so. Children are to be protected. May the full weight of justice fall upon any who have had a hand in any of this. Gloria Fritz says, this case is so heartbreaking. Many prayers for Quinton. Marie Burke says, may God's loving arms hold you tight, dear baby Quinton. You're loved by so many people around the world. May the swift hand of justice come down on the person who brought you into this world. She's not a true loving mother, just an egg donor who didn't deserve your precious little life. Ramallah says, it is beyond heartbreaking that killers now hijack the word mother and use that word for their dirty, disgusting existence, especially when killing a child. It has become far too common now, and that is a shame. My heart goes out to little Quinton, who barely got to live. It angers me to no end. Many prayers for those who actually loved and cherished this beautiful, gorgeous boy. Rest in bliss, little one. P.S. Sorry if this hurts real true mothers who actually care about their kids. I'm not talking about you, says Ramallah. Maggie Jane says, what on earth could this woman have been going through that would make her kill her own little child? Was she that angry? Why? Why couldn't anyone tell that this could happen? Is there a way to prevent this from happening again? What signs should we look for to prevent innocent babies from ending up in landfills? These are my questions as I search for answers to a tragedy of losing not just one, but more than one life to the pain of this world. So sorry, baby Quinton. Whatever it was not your fault. We'll pray for your mother, and I hope she deserves it. Liza Joe says, much respect towards all the searchers. What a horrible job. Well done. And that's a good point, Liza Joe. These agencies were going layer by layer in this landfill when they finally ran across his remains. And that had to be very hard for all of them. The 1960 Ava says, rest in peace, baby boy. Tina Reddington says, it's very hard for me to wrap my head around anyone murdering a child. They can't even defend themselves. Trace on the Case says, everyone says CPS takes kids for no reason. In this case, they were right, and he'd been in a foster home. If he'd been in a foster home, he'd be alive. It goes both ways. Harmony Wells, too, if she'd just stayed in a foster home, would be alive. Summer Wells probably, too. What cases like the California City Boys happen, they trash foster parents like they're all bad. Having been one myself, it upsets me greatly. We've got to improve the system. Some kids are just not safe with the ones who should love them the most. JJ School, I heard, had called CPS. If they'd intervened, he's probably had gone to K. Just like with this case, they try to place with the family first. Quinton's grandma chose not to see the danger there. It's on her too. Just saying, it sounds like his sitter loved him. I hope that was his reprieve. Rest in peace, sweet boy. And when I had posted this on the community wall and got these comments, I myself had said, rest in peace, Quinton Simon, in the loving embrace of God. And Jennifer Cheney said, amen. And so this is another case. We just see it over and over again. And, what I'm trying to home in on is there are similarities. In other words, these children were murdered, basically. And what was going on, you think about it. Just think about it. All the things that Quinton's mother behaved and acted like. I gave you a little bit of taste of it when she went and actually did an interview saying she hoped the child was safe and all that. She did shed a few tears, but I'm pretty sure she was shedding them because of her stress of being found out. And what bothers me about it is her mother was sitting right there with her. Her mother absolutely had to have known her own daughter well enough to know that this was no abduction. Maybe she turned a blind eye to it herself, but the bottom line is it just seems to me that this woman whose daughter had this little 20-month-old, she already was trying to get her out of her own home and had custody of the child. While the child was in that home, she should have been keeping an eye on him, but this shoulda, coulda, woulda shit just ain't going to help the situation moving forward. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go through this case of Quinton Simon in the timeline and then get to Chad and Lori's timeline so that you and I both can be very clear. It's not just about pictures of Lori and Chad on the beach or in a grocery store or on yoga mats or the things that were going on after the children's bodies were put on the property. It was their behavior. And the fact that there is depravity, there is absolutely, there is the circumstances surrounding the murder. The defendants exhibited utter disregard for human life. So let's just go into it. On Wednesday, October 5th of this year, Quinton is seen around 6 a.m. in his playpen at his Buckhalter Road home. He is noticed missing around 9 a.m. and the police are contacted. Now, this is what they've got as a timeline for Quinton Simon. It's my opinion that if they're getting this information from the woman the mother of this child that was just arrested for his murder, no one really knows. She could tell him whatever she wanted. This could have been the night before. This could have been through the night. And we've all talked about, the fact that it's kind of hazy on when Tylee and JJ were actually murdered. What time, they've got GPS on Alex's phone and all of this and that, but that doesn't really nail it down. And I'm hoping the state of Idaho has more evidence. If they're depending on Melanie Gibb and David Warwick to give them, this some kind of, pinpointing of when the murders took place, I guarantee you, John Pryor is going to home in on it because Melanie Gibb's full of shit to talk about. She could call or text Chad and Lori on that, that weekend there, and that she didn't want to knock on Lori's door and all that. That all is going to look very suspicious to any jury. I mean, there's just absolutely, from that last interview of Melanie Gibb, it seems to me that Hermosillo and Hope there, when they were doing that interview, they were trying to nail her down so that it would make sense. It did not make sense whatsoever at all. To say that Lori and them were there, but then turns around and they have evidence that Melanie Gibb is trying to call Chad or text Chad and Lori. Well, that means that that Lori wasn't there. And then if you think about this Quinton Simon's mother, she's talking about, no one else has said. The grandmother of Quinton, she doesn't say that she saw that child at 6 a.m. in the playpen. It's the mother of the child that's been charged. She's the one that's given them this timeline. The Chatham County Police and the Savannah Police mounted a patrol. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, a Liberty County Sheriff's Office, K-9 team, and a mosquito control helicopter took part in the search that day on October 5th. And again, think about the time that went by before anybody said the children were missing. And this goes back to this whole thing that I told y'all, that when Lori and Chad took off, it was right before Thanksgiving. Did Melanie P. just not ask Lori, hey, are y'all going to Janice's for Thanksgiving? And then if you move forward to December, would anybody have asked Lori or Chad? I mean, did Chad buy Christmas presents for his kids? Did Lori? Of course not. They were gone. Thursday, October 6th, the police chief, Jeff Hadley, holds a press conference saying, in part, police are treating the case as a missing person investigation, and there's no evidence to indicate Quinton is no longer alive. And this is the day after he's reported missing. But the FBI got involved in this case, and they got involved with Tylee and JJ's case. And remember, it initially began as a checkup on JJ, and no one really knew until they went to Kobe's to ask him, and he said, well, I haven't even heard from Tylee. So time had gone by, and every moment that Melanie Gibb kept her freaking mouth shut, that not only gave Chad and Lori time to get away, but it also kept law enforcement agencies from really homing in and getting down to the nitty-gritty. In Quinton Simon's case, it was from day one. Friday, October 7th, Chief Hadley provides an update on the case during his regularly scheduled presentation. In the court documents obtained by WJCL, it is learned that the grandparents are the ones who have custody of Quinton, and that the grandmother was trying to remove the child's mother, Lonnie Simon, and her boyfriend, Daniel Youngkin, from the home. Now, again, you got Kay and Larry Woodcock, who are the grandparents of JJ, right? Well, in Quinton Simon's case, the grandmother of this child was the one that was absolutely having custody. Kay and Larry did not have that. They did not have the custody of JJ. That's why it was the way it was. This woman, she was trying to get the mother of this child away. And, the bottom line is through it all, since his disappearance, as you see the interview, the grandmother's sitting right by her daughter. And you got to wonder. You just got to wonder about all that. Wednesday, October the 12th, the police department issued a statement which read, "Today marks 1 week since Quinton Simon was reported missing. We will be at his home where he was last seen with a team of search dogs and investigators. We will spend today gathering and analyzing evidence. We expect to schedule a media briefing tomorrow." And then they go on to issue a statement saying, "We are saddened to report that CCPD and the FBI have notified Quinton Simon's family that we believe he is deceased. We have named his mother, Leilani Simon, as the prime suspect of his disappearance and death, but no arrests have been made and no charges have been filed." Now, remember, Wednesday, October the 5th, he was reported missing, and by October the 12th, this is when the law enforcement agencies there said they believed he was deceased, okay? So you're looking at a week later. For whatever evidence they've got, they believe he is deceased. At this moment, you think about it, the way that the grandmother and the mother of this child behaved, and then you think about when the FBI came out with a press release about Tylee and JJ. They never did say that they felt they were deceased. They said they could be in danger. October the 18th, police and FBI say Quinton's remains were placed in a dumpster and taken to a nearby landfill. And we have no idea why they had that theory, whether they had evidence behind that. There was no arrests made on the mother, although she was the only suspect. People were very upset. There was protests outside of the house. People were wondering why nothing was getting done. And if you look at the Chad and Lori Daybell case, specifically Lori and how she was behaving, you think about this. The children are dead in September and October. What's going on? You got the attempt on Brandon's life. That to me shows me some desperation for funds, for money, to try to take Brandon out for his life insurance with Melanie P. October, you also think about the attempt on Tammy's life. You think about she gets murdered on October the 19th. Again, on October 18th, in terms of Quinton Simon, now an extensive search of the landfill is underway in the hopes of finding the child's remains. And this child's mother, Quinton Simon's mother, she knew, because they gave these updates. She knew what they were saying. She also knew that they were saying she was the only suspect on October 19th of this year. And y'all know back what was going on October 19th of 2019. But this year, on October 19th, the search continues at the landfill for Quinton Simon. Multiple witnesses say Leilani Simon and her mother, Billy Joe Howell, were seen drinking shots at a Tybee Island establishment. WJCL also learned that the police were called to a Tybee motel twice after hecklers discovered Quinton's family members were staying there. Now, does anybody want to explain to me, just as we've talked about, how could Chad and Lori behave the way they had, knowing what they knew? How could the mother of a 20-month-old little boy go to a restaurant and behave? They said she was flirting with one of the waiters. She was taking shots. And on top of it all, the grandmother of this child was there doing it with her. I mean, it is so rude and so awful to even think, and to know that Leilani Simon knew that she took this child's body, put it in a dumpster, and it ended up in a landfill. And yet she's gone to this restaurant doing shots. Her mother, say her mother, okay, Billy Joe Howe, the grandmother of Quinton, she knew the child was missing. Even if she believed her daughter had nothing to do with it, who in the hell is going to go and behave like that at a restaurant? And yes, they went to stay at a hotel because their house was being swarmed with protesters, basically saying the same shit as what Nate Eaton said to Lori and Chad, where are the children, where are the children? These people were outside Quinton Simon's residence saying, tell us where he's at. You know you did this. And the police had been called several times. Again, from October the 19th, when they're out there boozing it up and staying at a hotel and behaving totally different than what a mother and grandmother should be behaving. Monday, October 24th, the search at the landfill resumes, and in an interview, Leilani Simon says she hopes her son will be found happy and alive, and said she's not hiding from law enforcement. Well, Lori and Chad, we know they ran off after the welfare check. And even when Lori was being arraigned in Hawaii and her appointed attorney there was saying, everyone knows where she's at. She's not hiding from anyone. She's been in touch with an attorney, and she would have turned herself in if they would have wanted her to. And that is true, y'all. She was not hiding. She was staying somewhere, and her and Chad were. They weren't hiding at all. They just ran off thinking that if they distanced themselves from all this, that they would be left alone. And, the bottom line is that, the police, they arrest her in Hawaii. She tries to keep from being extradited back from Idaho, but then she learns that those Hawaii jail cells are disgusting, which is exactly where she deserves, and went ahead and decided to be extradited. And it's very funny, in my view, that Chad would leave before her. I mean, he made his way back to Idaho, so this whole thing about they were moving there is a crock of shit as far as I'm concerned. And for Lori to say to Melanie Gibb, he's perfectly happy, he's perfectly safe, and then you have Leilani Simon saying, I hope he's happy and safe, and that somebody wanted a baby. She's trying to think of the best way to make it seem when she talks to the media that, this isn't as bad as it sounds, as somebody might have took him. You know what? I don't give a damn. If somebody took my 20-month-old child, if I had one, and to say very calmly, well, maybe someone couldn't have kids, and, it's almost like they're saying it's okay. It's okay. It's just like when Nate Eaton said to Lori, you got everyone praying for the kids and everything. And Lori says, well, that's nice. I mean, it all just kind of parallels one another. Now, that's October 24th, here last month, that all this was going on, that Leilani Simon was trying to ice over or to kind of put frosting on this whole deal, that her child probably was with someone who was treating little Quinton fine when she knew in her heart and mind that he was dead. It was her hope that he would never be found. That's the only common sense explanation, just as it was the only common sense explanation that Lori was hoping that the children would never be found. But pretty much a whole month later, on November 21st, which was just here last Monday, y'all, it says preliminary findings show the remains found at a landfill are human. Authorities believe the remains are Quinton's. Just last Monday, and I posted it on the community wall, they found Quinton Simon. And if we think back on June 9th of 2019, we know the children were found. And you think about before they were found, before the children in Idaho were found, and before Quinton Simon was found in Georgia. The bottom line is, as you think about everything, how these people behaved, how they all behaved. Leilani Simon is charged in the murder of her missing toddler, as well as concealing the death of another, false statements or writings to conceal facts, or fraudulent documents in matters of government, and false report of a crime. And it goes into a family friend is detailing the dramatic final hours before Georgia mom Leilani Simon was arrested for the murder of her toddler son, including Leilani's last free meal with her own mother, the grandmother of Quinton Simon. Simon, 22, was arrested on Monday after police announced they found remains believed to be those of the 20-month-old son, Quinton, in a landfill on Friday. Speaking to WTOC by phone on Tuesday, Simon's mother, Billie Howe, was too emotional to discuss the case and handed the phone to a family friend. Well, you know what? This woman, she sat by her daughter and let her daughter sit there and say, oh, somebody probably took Quinton. They thought they were being his savior. They just wanted a child of their own. And, you see her, Leilani Simon's mother, the grandmother, acting like, I'm standing by my daughter and everything. The friend, who has not been identified, told the outlet that Simon checked herself into rehab in the weeks before her arrest. When Howe heard that Simon was leaving the facility, she had to make one of the hardest decisions of her life and call the FBI agents and let them know that she was signing herself out and that she was going to be a flight risk. Now, stop for a minute. How would the grandmother know that her daughter was going to be a flight risk? We can sit here and say, well, at least she did the right thing. She called the FBI and said, hey, she's been in this, facility and she's going to sign herself out. And I just want y'all to know that, she could be a flight risk, which says to me that Leilani Simon was going to flee. And, the bottom line is the grandmother, she should have been all along taking care of that child and not leaving that child with her daughter, who she was trying to get out of her residence anyway. At the FBI's request, Howe picked Simon up from the treatment center herself. They asked her to buy some time, so she went and picked up Leilani's belongings from another center, and then she took Leilani to have her last free meal, the friend explained. The pair then went to the FBI office in Savannah, where Simon was arrested a few hours later. And so now she's in custody, and they're waiting for confirmation through DNA testing, through FBI lab of Quinton's remains, but they're very highly confident, they said in their news conference that this child was found in the landfill. And again, you think about how this child's mother behaved before she was arrested. And make no mistake, she knew all along, and time again, you can look it up. You can Google many instances where people commit crimes, and what's one of the first things they do? Let me give you an example. Alex Murdaugh. He had committed these crimes. I believe he murdered his wife and son. I also believed he did all these other financial crimes. What did he do? He checked himself into a rehab. And there are many times they do that. They try to hide out in there. They know that once they're checked into a rehab, that is medical. There's HIPAA violations that could happen if anyone ever, makes that known or whatever. It's a way to hide. But you didn't see that with Chad and Lori. You saw them going to Hawaii, which is as far away in the continental U.S. as you can. And they stayed out there We see pictures of Chad and Lori coming in and out with a camera where they're wearing hats and all this and that. And you think about how Nate Ayton and them shed a light on Chad and Lori. The times that Chad and Lori were going to the temple in Hawaii and the grocery stores and the beach, coming back from the beach and all this and that. You can be sure that Chad and Lori knew all along, because you think about this. If Chad wants to say, and John Pryor's alluding to it, that this was Alex and Lori, why then, with all of this pressure from the news media, why didn't he say, Lori, you need to go, we need to get this straightened out. The media's pressing down on us. Well, let's look at the behaviors of Chad and Lori, knowing what we know now, that they absolutely knew those children were murdered and buried in his backyard. We know that Lori, Alex, JJ, and Tylee visited Yellowstone on September 8th. And we saw the picture, the notorious picture of them standing there. Tylee's got JJ in her arms. They're all smiling. You see the one of Lori with JJ. She's wearing the black jacket. She's smiling and all this and that. They absolutely knew that this was it for them. And make no mistake, they've got the GPS down where they stopped at a barbecue place. To me, this was Tylee's last meal, y'all. Just as Quinton Simon had her last meal before being arrested. You think about that. Then on September 8th, the same day that Alex and Lori and the kids are at Yellowstone and they go back to the apartment complex, what is Chad Daybell doing? Chad Daybell is signing an application for Tammy to increase her life insurance to the maximum amount allowed on the policy. If Alex and Lori, who had control of these children, and you think about that, they're the ones, Alex and Lori, the ones that were with the children. That was normal. You got Chad over here. He was signing this along with Tammy. It says it in the indictment, and that's his norm, being with Tammy and his family. They were both absolutely showing each other in more ways than one that they were dedicated to what they were going to do to the children and to Tammy. But before all of that, okay, before the Yellowstone, before Chad and Tammy increased the insurance and all that, you think about September 3rd, where Lori enrolls JJ at Kennedy Elementary School in Rexburg. Principal Josh Wilson says, less than 3 weeks later, JJ attends class for the last time, and his mother unenrolls him, saying he would be homeschooled. Tylee was never enrolled in any school in Idaho, even though Lori claimed her daughter was attending BYU, and we all know why on September 3rd she enrolled JJ. I remember a year and a half so, I was like, why would she do that if the plan was that he was going to be murdered? Well, she had to keep them benefits. They needed to keep coming. And by the way, it'll either be Friday or Saturday. We're going to be doing financial crimes of Lori and Chad. Trust me when I say it's not going to be boring. I've got a lot I want to talk to y'all about. I hope you'll be there. But then you've got October 1st, Lori rents a 10 by 10 storage unit from Self Storage Plus in Rexburg. You think about that, okay? September, the kids are dead, okay? October 1st, she's renting that storage unit. If she thought that the children were still alive, if she wants to say Alex and Chad did all this, then what's the whole purpose of that? Why is she doing that? Of course, then you think about the behavior of Lori and Alex and Chad as it relates to that storage unit. You think about Chad grabbing Lori's ass, knowing good and damn well that those children were dead. Think about that. Think about the kind of mind it takes for a man to grab a woman's ass, knowing that woman was the mother of the children that were murdered and put in his backyard. That tells you the depravity and the total disregard of human life. Those children. Then we know about October 2nd, about the attempt on Brandon's life. That to me was desperation. They had to get that money. They wanted that money. You know about October 9th. You think about that. Lori and Alex and Chad, they had a plan. And Chad and Alex, I believe that was something that was probably thought out. Alex was the one with the paintball gun. Tammy gets on Facebook and talks about how she went in to get Chad. Think about that. Think about Chad already knows the children are buried in the backyard. He knows that Alex was out in the front while Tammy was getting out of her vehicle with her groceries. That was supposed to be the time that Tammy was murdered, basically. And something went wrong. You think about what it takes for a man, for his wife to walk in the door and say, somebody was out there with a paintball gun. And how he probably, it couldn't just be, she was like, oh, it was probably some prank because they called the police. Chad probably smoothed everything over when it didn't work on October 9th of 2019. He probably told Tammy, oh, it's probably some kid pulling a prank. The police left there, didn't do anything about it. And of course, then we know that Chad he's murdered Tammy on October 19th of 2019, and he knows at the same time that those children are murdered and buried in his backyard. Lori, during this time, think about this, being the mother of these two children, how she could wake up every day since their murders and continue to do all the things she was doing, taking pictures of ammo, renting storage units, putting the kids' stuff in the storage units. The fact that she didn't have a problem with Chad and her continuing through this adulterous affair and all of this stuff. November the 26th, the Rexburg Police Department conducts a welfare check for JJ and Tylee. And what's the first thing Lori does? She lies. Chad lies. Alex lies. All three of them lie on November 26th of 2019. Okay, so they're not at all. It'd been different if Chad have said, well, officer, me and Lori got married, and Alex and Lori said that the kids were off somewhere safe to hide them from Kay and Larry Woodcock because they won't leave them alone. But you think about all the lies they made that shows their guilt through and through. Of course, the day after the welfare check, November 27th, the Rexburg Police Department serves a search warrant. And you got to stop and think about, they removed all the clothes. Lori removed all the clothing and everything out of that house, out of that apartment, just to absolutely know that she's throwing this stuff in the back of Alex's truck. And Alex knowing she's doing that. A neighbor says they saw them that evening after the welfare check, putting all the stuff in Alex's truck and leaving. The fact that they told the neighbors that the kids were off in Louisiana, the things that they did, it's just incredible. And think about February 12th, which is the day before that picture is shot of Lori lovingly looking up at Chad in Hawaii, leaning on that grocery cart. The day before that, Kay tells East Idaho News that in February of 2019, Charles removed Lori from a $1 million life insurance policy, and Kay was named the sole beneficiary. And you know what? There is no way that Chad and Lori was not keeping up on the news, because Lori knew once she called the insurance company back in 2019 that somebody, and I'm sure she knew it was Kay. It wouldn't have been anybody else. Maybe she might have thought that it could have been his kids in his previous marriage that got it. But the bottom line is she told Chad on the text message, I don't know who got it. I'm not the beneficiary, basically. But the reason I bring this up is during all of this time, even back in end of 2019, when the FBI has that press release, Chad and Lori both know. They know through media reports what's going on through the whole thing. Then you've got the February 2020 arrest of Lori on $5 million warrant out of Madison County. And, at that time, at that moment, that's when Chad would have stepped up to say, you know what, she and Alex has been telling me that, they've got the kids hid somewhere because they don't want the kids taken from Lori because of Kay and Larry and blah, blah, blah. I've said it time and time again. Chad had every opportunity from the get-go, anytime, especially the day of the welfare check. Anytime he could have said, this is what Lori and Alex told me. But see, this lends into the whole reality that Chad was behind all this with Lori and Alex. You got the February 26, 2020, Lori waives her extradition to Idaho after 6 days behind bars in Hawaii. The waiver comes after multiple attempts to reduce bail, and the Idaho authorities extradite Lori from Hawaii to Rexburg on March the 5th. They land in an airplane at the Rexburg airport, and Nate Eaton attempts to speak with her before deputies drive her to the Madison County Jail, and she refuses to speak. Lori makes her initial court appearance in Rexburg on March 6. Hundreds wait in line, hoping to catch a glimpse of the hearing where Magistrate Judge Farron Eddins reduced her bail to $1 million, but she remains in jail and able to post the bond. And on April the 9th, East Idaho News obtains a letter from the Idaho Attorney General stating Chad and Lori are under investigation for conspiracy, attempted murder, and/or murder by the Idaho Attorney General's office. Think about that, y'all. Before, when Lori was brought back she gets arrested in Hawaii, then she goes back to Idaho. It ain't till April that the word murder's even brought up. Remember, initially, Lori was arrested for not producing the kids and all of this. And then Chad was arrested for concealment of the bodies, which was later dismissed. They had to get them in jail until they built their quince. And any time during any of this, just as any time during this whole October to November month that Quinton Simon, she could have at any time came to them, especially when the little Quinton boy, the 20-month-old child, was missing. She could have said, this terrible accident happened. I was so scared I'd get in trouble. So I did what I did, but I didn't murder him. I just was so scared. That, to me, her behaviors, the fact that Quinton Simon, she went on to drink and stay at a hotel and then go on an interview and say that she hoped the child was with somebody that wanted children and all that. The bottom line is that she handled it the way she did to try to make it look better than it did, and so did Lori and Chad. They absolutely, through just their behavior, they didn't have to give an interview. They didn't have to say, think about it like this. What if after December when Alex died, Lori and Chad could have come out and said, Alex told us that we let Alex take the kids off somewhere to keep them safe from being taken away from Lori through Kay and Larry or whatever. And now that he's dead, we don't know where they're at. Or the fact that, what was it? There was a part that I really felt very strongly about where it's like if Lori could prove that she gave Tylee and JJ's benefits, remember she's got Social Security fraud and all that, the money, remember still going to get the $4,000 a month. If she could prove that she took that money and put it in Alex's account or Chad's account, she could say that I gave that money to Chad or Alex because I thought they were taking care of the kids. Again, I know that's reaching. We know the truth. We know she's full of shit. We know she did what she did. On June the 9th, we know what happened there. Chad is arrested. Again, this would have been the perfect time. He could have given an interview any time before. Lori was arrested at the beginning of 2020. During the time that she was arrested, he could have given a statement or an interview. Could have went to police at any time. He didn't do that. Lori, once before she was arrested, she could have went. And she was in contact with an attorney. And those attorneys are going to have, I don't know. I don't think they're able to say what Lori and Chad said to them. That's attorney-client privilege. But she could have went to them and said, I've got the kids off in a bunker somewhere. And then when she was arrested, that would have been a sure meal deal there. And then, of course, you got Janice saying that she told someone in Hawaii to go to Lori and say, just take the kids and put them in a room and take a picture. And leave it at that. And let everyone know they're alive. But again, this goes back to not having any kind of behavior that is consistent with even giving a rat's ass about these children. Leilani Simon didn't give any thought to it. She went on, did the things she did. She would have continued to not tell them what really happened. If they wouldn't have found this child's body, Quinton Simon, in the landfill, she would have continued to do what she was doing. And Lori and Chad, if those children's bodies wasn't found in Chad's backyard. I mean, think about it like this. January of 2020, that was before Lori was arrested. They went on Chad Daybell's property and there was snow on the ground. That would have been a time for Chad to really say, dang, this is closing in. And even though I know the children are underneath that snow in my backyard, now is the time to craft something to save myself from all of this. But he didn't do it. He didn't do it because he didn't think, and it's my view, that him and Lori actually thought this was some kind of divine thing. They weren't going to get busted. They did get busted. They have exceptional depravity of human life, which is an aggravating factor, and they're going to have to deal with it. Pure and simple. So, leave your comments. Give me other examples of Chad and Lori's behavior that is exceptionally, the depravity, the way they behaved, acting like, and we know now that they knew those children were murdered, that Tammy was murdered. Think about all the things that they did, the things that Alex did. Alex went off to Las Vegas and got married to Zuzu there and, slapped the baby oil on her, knowing good and damn well that he murdered those children, that he was the heavy hitter there. And he did it because Chad and Lori wanted him to do it. He went and got married. Melanie P. and Ian, they knew what they knew. After the fact, Ian's document, think about how they behaved. Think about how Melanie Gibb behaved, David Warwick behaved. All of them, the whole cult in and of itself, the way they behaved. It shows the depravity. It shows aggravating factors in a death penalty case. So leave those in the comments and let me know what you think. Remember, Friday, Saturday, I'm going to go into the financial crimes, but we're going to put a little twist on it. It'll be more interesting than just going over, beating a dead horse about it. Because we went over the money before. We know that these two diabolical, evil people, along with their cult, was interested in the money and the sex. Pure and simple. So, leave your comments. I love you all. And keep on looking.